Oh my goodness. Can you imagine striving to be a professional speaker and actually hooking your first speaking engagement? I'm going to reflect on my very first speaking engagement, and I'm saying it's my first one, but by the time I received this request, I, of course, already been speaking publicly for quite a while, but it's a difference between speaking in front of an audience and getting paid to speak in front of an audience. So let me tell you guys how that occurs. Straighten up my clothes here. So as I said, had already been speaking publicly. I've worked in many of my jobs as like a community liaison. So I would be in front of community events and speaking and getting people acclimated to the neighborhood, getting people trained on some of the different jobs sites that I'd had and things like that. So I wasn't familiar with speaking publicly, but of course, one of the things I wanted to do besides write my books and read all day long um, was getting into the arena of public speaking. And I had always known that there was something I wanted to do. Even as a kid, I was like, it would be really nice to inspire and motivate people. So, welcome to my channel. It's called Life Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry, and I'm going to tell you how I was able to secure that first paid speaking gig, but actually, it didn't have anything to do with me. So, let's get started. As you all know by now, or at least my regular viewers know by now, I have three daughters. And after my divorce, I left, the city of Detroit and moved to a different place. But I was always involved in all aspects of my girls' education. So I knew their, grade school teachers, their middle school teachers, and high school teachers, and things like that. Well, during this point in their lives, they were in middle school, and I would go to the school and volunteer and do things in the classroom to assist the teachers and things like that. Plus, it allowed me to keep an eye on what my girls were doing and what they weren't doing. They were always doing what they should be. So I want to say that up front. And what was I going to say? So at one point, one of the girls' school teachers came up to me and she said that they were going to be having a major event for parents and students in the auditorium in a couple of weeks. And she was had been watching me and she liked the way that I interacted and communicated with the teachers as well as the students and the office staff. And she was wondering if I would be willing to be on the roster to speak to the students just to kind of inspire them to make sure they were doing their homework. If they had questions, they would either ask their parents or their teachers, and know how to get along with other students and not do bullying and fighting and things like that. So like every aspiring speaker does, I just said yes without even thinking, because I'm like, oh, it's another opportunity for me to get in front of people and hone my craft. And that's so I told her I would get the details from her, the date, the time, what the subject matter was that she wanted me to go over and everything. And I was just excited about the whole thing, basically because again, with my girls' school, so I'm able to participate in that and have the opportunity to kind of showcase the skills that I did have as far as public speaking goes, which is going to be a little funny when you hear what this teacher asked me while I was speaking to address the assembly about. But anyway, I so we get there. Well, I get there, and you know me, I'm always early. So I get there early to check out the mic, check out where everyone's going to be sitting, where I'm going to be standing, all the things a speaker would do prior to, getting to do the actual speech. And this was a huge auditorium. Sometimes they can almost feel most of the school in it. And this was a important assembly because it was the beginning of the school year. So they wanted to let the students know who their teachers would be, what classes they would be taking, and what to expect, the expectations and the guidelines and things like that. And because I had already been a volunteer at the school, many of the students knew me. They knew my girls and they knew me and that kind of thing. So that was cool. Well, um, when I got up to speak, I'm always excited when I'm speaking, but I was super excited because it's different when you have an audience full of adults than when you have an audience full of kids. So you really have to keep the children engaged and keep their attention and kind of make it interactive so they can raise their hands and ask questions and things like that and feel like they're part of everything. So it was all going really well. And the teacher stood in the back and the kids were all seated in the auditorium and everything. And as I was not really finishing, the speech, I was, asking the kids for some difficult situations that they found themselves in the prior year so that I can develop a solution for them now so they wouldn't have to experience that for the coming years. And remember, this is life lessons learned. So I'm trying to impart to the students here that as you learn lessons in life, adapt, adapt them into your life so that you are able to move forward and you're not having the same complaint year after year, moving forward. So we going through all of that. I've answered questions, everyone's having a good time. And then at the end, you also do a Q&A, questions and answers. So I asked if anyone had any questions. The teacher who had asked me to speak raised her hand. So I'm like, okay, this is a little different. I mean, normally they would meet with you beforehand to say, hey, this is what I want you to cover, that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, maybe she's just, you know, encouraging the students, to do the same. So she said, Miss Brantley, many of these students come from, at this time, back in the day, they used the term broken homes. There's really no such thing as a broken home, but okay. But, that was the norm. So she said, many of these students come from broken homes. And I'm thinking, yeah, so did my girls, but I didn't. And she said, and I just want you to be able to tell them what it's like as um, as a speaker, what it's like to have been a teenage, um, mom. I don't know what it's like to be a teenage mom because I didn't have my first kid until I was 24. Okay. But if you saw it in my earlier videos, you'll know that years, for many years, I looked really, really, I looked much younger than my age. So a lot of times people would see me with, three kids and they thought I started at 16 or something. But I was like, no, I was married in 24 and 26 and 28. But I did not want to, em- embarrass this teacher. But of course, I had to correct her because I'm like, uh, I wasn't a teenage mom. I don't have any idea what it's like. So what I said was, well, I do know some people who have experienced being a teen mom. I said, but that wasn't my case since I was married and didn't have my kids until I was in my mid 20s. I said, but I can certainly talk about the um, disadvantages of, having to miss school and not having, not being married and not having a two-parent household when you're first starting out with your family and everything, and how difficult it can be too for the young ladies who find themselves in that situation. They have to make a decision whether they're going to go into motherhood fully or if they're going to, have the child put up for adoption or if their parents will be helping them. So I just kind of went through the common sense details of what it must be for someone who finds themselves in that situation as a teen. But I really thought it was interesting because we that wasn't the subject of my whole speech. I was more so talking to the kids about if you're being bullied or being sure not to be the bully. And of course, focusing in on their homework and if they needed help with anything and don't feel as if, they're stupid or anything like that. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't be afraid to ask the teacher for extra assistance if it's needed. Try to make sure you're getting to school on time. All the things that would make for a better student and more so of a better environment for them so that they could take advantage of all the opportunities that would be to get the type of education that their parents and the community would like for them to receive. So that was very interesting. Now the paid part comes in as a surprise to me because remember I was already volunteering at the school and everything, and so I wasn't planning on even getting paid for this particular event, and I must spoke for only 35 to 40 minutes because, they had other speakers lined up and it was during the school day and the kids weren't going to miss the whole day of school. It was just going to be from the beginning of the day there. So I was like, okay, no big deal. Well, as the students were filing out, some of the teachers came up to me to congratulate me. They told me they really loved the points that I made with them, and they could see, some of the students nodding their heads, and they liked that they were participating by raising their hands and asking questions and things like that. And then that teacher that asked me to speak came over to me, and she handed me an invoice, and I was like, "What is this?" She said, "Your invoice for to get paid." And I was like, "You never said I was getting paid. You asked me about like to speak." And she said, "Well, why wouldn't we pay you? If anyone else came in, we would pay them. So just put what your fee is." So, when you haven't even been paid before, I'm like, It's not going to be a lot. My kids already go here. I'm really helping the school." And she said, "Well, the standard fee is $250." And she said, "But because you're, local and you didn't have to travel or anything, we didn't have to pay expenses for that. So I'm sure I can get it up to 300, you guys." I'm like, wait a second here. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to turn down $300 for a 35, 40 minutes speak speaking engagements to students who were it's fun to do anyway. But that really changed my whole paradigm on moving forward with speaking and becoming more professional with it and seeking out opportunities for myself to be able to secure speaking engagements. um, Again, I had always thought about doing that anyway, but to see how much fun I had doing it, and then on top of that to really get paid well for it, that was something that I was very interested in and very excited about, and I really could not wait to pursue that. And so that was what it was like for my very first speaking engagement. Well, my my first paid speaking engagement. But I can tell you, it only got better from there. So you're going to hear in my next video here what it was like for me to actually do a major, and I mean major, speaking event. It was one that was done at Michigan State University there in Michigan, and it actually entailed people coming from all over the state and from out of state to hear and see and participate in different workshops and seminars. And um, I was asked to do a seminar for parents, and it was based on information that I already was doing with parents. So I had what was called a STEP program, STEPP, and that stands for Start to Exercise Personal Power. And I do have my book on that subject available at Amazon.com. But for the workshop, what I was doing was sharing with parents how they could increase their child's academic levels for reading, writing, spelling, different tips and techniques that they could use. But you guys, I'm going to be honest with you. For that particular speaking engagement, and I had been speaking for a while by that time, but like I said, nothing that major. I mean, this was in a huge venue, and people had to sign up for it to take your particular class. And or I should say, seminar. And my seminar was entitled "Raising You Can," YOUCAN, kids. And actually, at that time, my license plate was personalized, and it was "You Can." So that was kind of interesting. But when I very first looked out over that crowd, I physically got sick because I did not plan on that many people having signed up for my particular seminar. And then to make matters worse, one of the people that had hired me for this to do the workshop came to tell me, she said, "We're going to have to open up the room where your seminar is at. More people signed up for yours than any of the others." I was like, "Thanks for that information." So I went into the restroom and threw up more than once before my time was to go on. But I'll talk to you about that and how I overcame that and what a success that particular speaking engagement turned out to be because other universities began to hire me after that, and many of the parents asked to ways for me to give out my business card so they can keep in touch with me and ask additional questions if they came up. So it was interesting, but I was like, I never would have thought, because I love speaking. I've always loved it, and I would think the bigger the crowd, the better. But you guys, like I said, I was so nervous when I saw that. And I was like, well, what if they don't like what I'm saying? What if I talk too fast? What if they ask a question that I don't know? And you guys are going to be happy to hear how that one ended and how I was able to make a smooth transition with the questions and answers that were given to me at the time. So, this is Life Lessons Learned. As you know, my mantra is knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And so from there, well, really from my very first speaking engagement, I learned to, take notes, be prepared, know what the subject matter is going to be. Also be prepared. I don't want to say for hecklers, but for some people who are, you know, they're sitting there with their arms crossed, like they don't want to hear anything you have to say, and they're just there for the food. I don't know. So I'll talk to you about the parenting classes that I did for a university there in Michigan and how some of those parents were not happy to see me. That's because I worked with two types of parents. I worked with those that were taking our classes voluntarily on their own, but I also had to work with, I said had to, I should say, but I also got to work with parents that were court ordered to take my class. So those would be some interesting stories. They'll be coming up next. Thank you. Please like and subscribe and share. And as usual, leave your comments in as to what you may have experienced with your first speaking engagement, your first whether it was paid or not paid, it would still be interesting to hear how you were able to handle it and overcome your fear of public speaking if you ever had that. I personally don't think I ever well, I can't say I didn't have it since I was so nervous at that other one. But yeah, like and subscribe. I do drop my videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So if you subscribe, you'll be able to get the notifications when I do drop them. Thank you. I enjoy all of you guys and thanks for visiting. Bye bye.